Good evening. My name is Janelle Watts, and I'm currently pursuing an MSc in Public Sector Management. Tonight, my task is to present my practicum proposal. The presentation will take the following format: practicum topic, proposed location of the practicum, administrative structure, focus of the practicum and rationale, practicum objectives, theoretical or conceptual framework, literature review, proposed methodology, expected learning, and it will end with references. The topic of my research is the role and relevance of credit unions in developing economies, the Antigua and Barbudan case study. The reason for choosing this topic is because I am of the opinion that credit unions generally are underrated and often can be seen as second class to the traditional banks. Because of the expanding services that credit unions now offer, they have made themselves relevant, and if there is concrete evidence to measure the level of impact, then the regulatory framework would reflect such. In order to get a holistic picture of the economic impact of credit unions and their relevance to economic development, the Financial Services Regulatory Commission, a government statutory body, was chosen as the place to execute the practicum since they are the governing body for credit unions, and the credit unions have to report to them on a monthly basis on all things relevant to their operations. The following diagram depicts the administrative structure of the FSRC, and if you look on the left side of the diagram, you would see the Director of International Banks and Trusts and Cooperatives and Microfinance. This is the person who is ultimately responsible for ensuring the tenets of the Financial Services Regulatory Commission Act 2015 are followed. In order to effectively carry out the elements of the practicum, I have chosen to do an internship since I believe it would be more practical than doing an internal placement. With the internship, it is hoped that I would be given an opportunity to visit and conduct interviews with the credit unions across Antigua and Barbuda. Focus of practicum and rationale. Credit unions have increasingly become more popular in Antigua and Barbuda for a number of reasons. For example, some have moved from closed to open bond credit unions, like the Community First Cooperative Credit Union, formerly Teachers Cooperative Credit Union, and the Seventh-day Adventist Cooperative Credit Union. They have also been increasing small businesses as well as homes that are financed by credit unions. As a result of the increases, how does that translate to economic development? Is it relevant? Do credit unions really have an impact on economic development? Therefore, the objectives of the practicum are to determine on a macro level the factors that contribute to economic growth and development, to determine the level of contribution credit unions make to the Antigua and Barbuda economy, and lastly, based on the contribution level, assess whether more needs to be done by the government to increase the support given to credit unions, whether legislative or otherwise, to continue and expand their work. From the preliminary research done, the following could be used to analyze and present the data that would be collected. The Community Economic Development Approach, the CED. The CED approach recommends that rural communities reorient away from a space economy context and towards a place-based economy as a way to become more resilient. A place-based approach encourages communities to look beyond natural resource exploitation and instead to consider the unique attributes of their particular place in order to generate their own solutions to their common economic problems. The ability to adapt to these local assets for economic gain depends on local capacity as well as a constant source of investment to maintain these competitive advantages. The generalized method of movement technique. In the literature, credit union loans to savings ratio is used as a proxy for credit unions' financial intermediation. Elements such as inflation, capital formation as a share of GDP, and credit to private sector as a share of GDP are used as control variables. To use these controlled variables is empirically grounded according to the literature. Inflation in the models measures the macroeconomic stability of the study, and countries' capital formation affects economic growth. Studies have also found a positive effect of private domestic credit on per capita GDP growth. Next, you have the dynamic ordinary least squares. This model is an econometric methodology which suggests that the variables of interest that affect economic growth are government capital expenditure, real capital stock, and cash of the credit union. The dynamic ordinary least squares methodology is a preferred method because it is good for small samples and give consistent estimates where variables have different orders of integration. Finally, you have the Pearls Financial Standards. These are the world standard measure for performance of credit unions. The acronym PEARLS is identified as protection, effective, financial structure, asset quality, rates of return and costs, liquidity, and signs of growth. These are presented as ratios which determine the viability and productivity of the credit union. The articles that have been considered so far are Impact of Credit Union Financial Intermediation on Economic Growth, a multi-cultural analysis by Odesi Kofi Afrain, by Odesi and Kofi Afrain. This article looked at the concept of microfinancing and its impact on economic growth. Microfinance is a term used to describe financial services such as loans, savings, insurance, and fund transfers to entrepreneurs, small businesses, and individuals who lack access to traditional banking services. Credit unions fall under this category, hence the relevance of the article to the research. The contribution of credit unions to the national development of Barbados by Griffith, Waith, Lord, and Craigwell. This article was chosen because of the regional context, and since the Barbados and Antiguan economies are similar, the article was considered for its value. Our liquidity is trust, not cash. Credit Unions and the Rural Social Economy by Kern Tenson, Markey, and Perry. This article is relevant since the impact of credit unions on development since it examines the impact of the credit unions have on development, and based on the assessments done, it was shown that there was indeed a positive relationship. Credit, the next article, Credit Unions and Community Economic Development. Fairbairn, Hammond, Keelston, and Krebs. This article sets the context and background regarding credit unions and their relevance to economic development. Although the information is dated, it is felt that it is still relevant. Proposed methodology. Familiarize myself with the data that is available regarding credit unions operating within Antigua and Barbuda. Assess the regulatory framework in which credit unions exist. Conduct interviews with credit unions to get a sense as to the impact on economic development credit unions have. Using the available data, construct a model to determine the impact, if any. And finally, record the findings and make recommendations on the way forward. The expected learning from this exercise is to get a better understanding of how the credit unions affect economic development, get a better understanding of the relationship between the regulatory body and the credit unions, and determine the benefits or disadvantages of the working relationship. Get a better understanding of the role the FSRC in general, determine whether the credit union themselves are aware of their impact and contribution to economic development. These are the references that were used to prepare this presentation, and thank you for your attention.